thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joe Irado, and with me, as always, is a guy who can start a fire with an ice cube, Mike Vandebogart.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you once again to all of our loyal listeners for tuning in. Just a couple of quick announcements. First, I would like to give a couple shout-outs to new Patreon members. So we've got Carissa Lamont. How do you think that goes, Joe?
I like how you practice this, too.
Yeah.
I think it's Carissa Lamonico.
Lamonico. We're going to go with it. Lamonico.
Go.
Jen Thompson and Julie Bailey. So thank you so much for supporting the show. We're just talking to another podcast recently, and we're thinking about maybe next year going to CrimeCon.
Ooh, in Orlando. We're like 80% there.
Yes.
I think we're 80% there.
It looks pretty fun. So, and also I'd like to give an episode suggestion shout out to, I'm going to butcher this name too, Fransisco Espinoza.
I think you got it. You like didn't trust in yourself, but
Yeah.
You actually got it. It's Fransisco Espinoza.
And as we always say, we love getting episode suggestions. I think our last 8 episodes have been from listener suggestions. So you can go to our website and email us. You can message us on any of the social medias. It sometimes takes us a while to get to your episode suggestion, but we will get to it.
Yeah, we have a lot of fans now, and a lot of suggestions are coming in.
Yeah, we're getting quite a few. And finally, the Gwen Hasselquist. So obviously, Joe and I are in the process of interviewing people, and we're hoping to have that episode out in the next month or so. I'm hoping.
Yeah, we were at Andy's place planning it all out, so we're taking time and eating up what would have been recording time and planning time to make sure we get this thing right.
But another fellow true crime podcast actually reached out to us. It's called the Luminal Podcast, and they cover more stories that no one else is covering. Not necessarily kind of the stuff we're doing, but very interesting podcast. They're going to actually talk about the case a little bit on their next episode, which I believe is next Wednesday. And they know some other podcasts. They're going to spread the word about Gwen's case. And I think Joe and I kind of always went into this. The goal is to get as much exposure to this case as possible.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier that they're all doing this. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and the ultimate goal is to eventually get the local law enforcement to reopen the case. So if any of you listening have your own true crime podcast, reach out to us and help spread the word about this case. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's all I had, Joe.
All right, everybody, let's gear up and get out to explore Locations Unknown. October 14th, 2016. A father, son, and an uncle went on a routine hunting trip in the Oregon wilderness. Deciding they could cover more ground, the group split up and planned to meet at the truck at the end of the day. When the father did not return, his son Trevor set out to try and find him, only to go missing as well. Join us this week as we discuss the strange disappearance of Shawn Higgins. So the location of our story this week is and I'm going to butcher this one. This one, we practiced it.
We actually practiced this.
The Rouge River-Siskiyou National Forest.
I think you got it.
I think I got it. Hold on. Let's see what Google says.
Siskiyou National Forest.
There we go.
I feel like that was a little wrong, just because of the inflection. She put the wrong emphasis on the right syllable.
Syllable. Oh boy.
So that is the Rouge River-Siskiyou National Forest. I'm going with that.
Yep.
And did I say Oregon right? It's Oregon, right? Oregon,
like an organ.
I know that, like that. The caller, she explained it, and I said it, and I was like, "Oh, I hope I got it right."
Yeah,
Oregon.
Yes,
Oregon. We used to say Oregon, right?
Oregon.
Yeah, and that's wrong.
That's wrong.
All right. So we'll get down to brass tacks. Sorry about that. So, the Rouge River-Siskiyou National Forest. It's an area known as the High Ridge near the top of Shasta Coastal Drainage.
Costa.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm missing that. Holy cow. It's near the Bear Camp area. So this is where the area that our people went missing. It's roughly 45 miles east of Gold Beach, Oregon. It's about 1.8 million acres, which is larger than the state of Delaware. So the forest extends into California from Oregon. 8 congressionally designated
congressionally designated wilderness areas are within the forest.
Oh, like within that one?
Yeah.
Okay. I was reading it as a bullet, and I'm like, that's a weird sentence. So the Rouge River National Forest was first established in 1906 and then combined with the Siskiyou National Forest in 2004. So they recently joined forces to become a major area. They see about 915,000 visitors per year. That was last checked in 2006. So what we're going to do is, because it's not a heavily trafficked area, there's not a lot of stuff going on, we're going to do some interesting facts about national forests. So national forests sustain more than 3,000 species of fish and wildlife, and more than 7 in 10 of all Americans live within 100 miles of a national forest. National forests are home to 122 ski areas and countless miles of backcountry access. National forests contribute $13 billion annually to the economy. At 17 million acres, Alaska's Tongass National Forest is America's largest national forest. I would have just guessed Alaska had the largest one. I think they can just like throw a dart in 3 spots and whatever triangle to make, like, there you go.
Yeah, it's
no one's living there. The Forest Service manages nearly 200 million acres of land across the U.S. That's roughly half the size of Alaska, which also goes to show how big Alaska is.
Yeah.
Kansas and North Dakota have no national forests, only national grasslands. Puerto Rico is home to only tropical rainforest in the National Forest System. So that's the only place you can go to in the National Forest System. I didn't know that was counted, because it's like not a state, but it's kind of, what is it called?
It's a U.S. territory.
Okay. Does that mean like we own it technically, but like we don't want to admit it?
I don't want to misspeak, but it's they get a lot of the protection from the United States, but they're not a state, so they don't have some of the same voting rights.
Okay. I know that's like when we hit it big, we're going to move the podcast down there. From what I hear, we got to like ditch taxes and stuff, right? Like to duck out. That's what I heard you do. Because the pod will be making so much money.
Yes.
The Tuskegee National Forest in Alabama is the smallest forest in the system at only 11,000 acres. So let's talk about the climate. The climate in the forest changes with the elevation as you move inland from the coast. The coast range in temperate rainforest, where rainfall ranges from 60 inches to over 100 inches at higher elevations. Rainfall occurs mostly from October through June. Further inland, annual precipitation is approximately 30 inches at the lower elevations of the Siskiyou Mountains. So that's a pretty big difference just from being by the coast. They're getting all the rain right away, and then it drops off dramatically.
Yep.
Much of the precipitation comes from October to April in the form of rain at low elevations and snow at the higher elevations, where very cold temperatures are possible. Although snow is possible in the lowest elevations, it is infrequent. Late spring, summer, and early autumn tend to bring clear, sunny days with moderate temperatures. And temperatures near the coast seldom exceed 75 degrees in the summer, and snow is rare in the winter. Inland, the ocean influence diminishes, and summer temperatures frequently reach the 80s and 90s. And snowfall of over 10 feet is common in the higher elevations of the Cascades in the winter. That is a lot of snow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of snow.
Good skiing snow.
Yeah. The terrain, the wilderness where Shawn went missing lies within the 1.7 million acre Rogue River-Siskiyou National Forest. It's listed as unforgiving country with high, sharp ridges and dense stands of cedar and fir. So it's dense, very, what would you say, like that when the escalation increases quickly? It's very abrupt. It's like very jagged.
Yeah.
The forest itself is composed of two distinct geological provinces, the Cascade Range and the Klamath and Siskiyou Mountains.
I think it's Klamath.
Klamath. We got in trouble for that one before, too, because I screwed that one up. Klamath. And the Siskiyou Mountains. Do you know we're saying Siskiyou right? We're just saying we're saying it right. There's some inflection we're missing, and we're going to get a ton of phone calls.
Yes.
Whatever that number is, make sure you call the number. The Cascade Range, it's east of Interstate 5. The forest contains the upper reaches of the Rogue River, located along the slopes of volcanic Cascade Range. The Cascade Range is dominated by snow-capped volcanic peaks such as the 9,495-foot Mount McLaughlin, located within Sky Lake's wilderness. Although the southern Cascades tend to have fairly gentle topography, several deep canyons such as Middle Fork and the Rogue and South Fork of Little Butte Creek are located in this part of the forest. It took me a while to see that last E. The area's extensive forest of Douglas fir, ponderosa pine, and other conifers are punctuated by frequent meadows, lakes, and meandering streams. What they're basically saying, it is gorgeous out there. The Siskiyou Mountains, west of Interstate 5, the forest resides within the ancient and complex geology of the Klamath and Siskiyou Mountains. This is a country of narrow canyons and high steep ridges. The elevation range from near sea level to the coast, to 7,533 feet at the summit of Mount Ashland, which is the highest point in Oregon west of the Cascades. The variety of environments includes open oak woodlands, dense conifer forests, and dramatic rocky ridge tops. So what are the types of animals we'll see there? Black-tailed deer, elk, black bear, bobcats, mountain lions, hundreds of bird species. There are bald eagles, and there's actually seals near the ocean. So they could have been hunting a number of things.
I think that they were, I'll get into it in the timeline, but they were hunting black-tailed deer.
But I've never seen a black-tailed deer. Or I might have, but
I've not. I mean,
we only have whitetail.
Yeah, we have whitetail deer here.
So, the terrain, the tree line in South Cascades ranges from 8,000 to 8,500 feet and lowers as you go north down to 6,000 feet. That's really low.
Yeah.
A 6,000-foot tree line as you go north? That seems really low. What's Colorado like? 10,000?
We've looked into it. Yeah, it's higher.
Yeah, it's like around 10
yeah, I don't know
11.
off the top of my head, but it's higher than that.
I love when you get to the edge and it's the tiny trees.
Yeah.
Like the trees are like, I can only grow to 2 feet. Yeah. But it's like full tree.
Yeah.
Exposure, there's weather at upper elevations above the tree line, which we talk about a ton. As soon as you leave the tree line, you're exposed to the elements if storms come around or anything like that.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said, they get sometimes upwards of 10 feet of snow at upper elevations, so
yeah.
You'd need to be prepared for that in the winter.
Yeah, you'll just get stuck. You can't even walk through that if snow's falling heavily enough.
Yes.
Difficulty. According to the All Trails report, there are dozens of trails ranging from easy to very hard.
Yeah, when I was on All Trails, they had over 80 trails for this forest.
Yeah, I didn't even pull up a ton of them, but they're just saying here are the top trails, and there's 83 of them, and they're showing you like the top 10.
There's all kinds of ranges of difficulty. There's some really tough ones that would, test even the best, backcountry hikers. And then there's some really easy ones you could take your little kids on, and looks like a pretty cool place to hike.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. I'm just scrolling through what All Trail says is the top 10. Yeah. And I would totally go there. I love this waterfall.
Yeah.
The Coquille River Falls Trail.
The crazy thing about national forests, in all the years we've done backcountry hiking, climbing, all that stuff, we've never considered national forests for one of our trips. We're always going to one of the big parks.
Yeah, it's like they have bad marketing teams.
But we've covered a lot of cases in national forests, and every forest we've covered looks amazing. I would spend a week in each one of them.
What's ridiculous is we love going where there's not a lot of people.
Yeah.
National forests are probably where you want to go. Because no one's hearing about them. Like, this is where we need to go. Like, look at this. National Creek Falls Trail.
Yeah.
That looks beautiful. Look at that flower. You can't see that anywhere else. No, that waterfall looks beautiful, though. I totally would go here.
It looks cool.
I want to go swimming in there.
It's probably super cold.
Yeah, that's all right. I do cold showers. I do that thing where you take a cold shower and it gets your circulation going, and it's crazy. All right, so there's miles of trail. They go through the whole area. There's mountain biking, fishing and swimming, backpacking, day hiking, ride and camp on horseback available. Tons of campgrounds and caverns are scattered across the Siskiyou. You can reserve them. A few, such as Oak Flat Campground, stay open year-round, while others are closed during the winter. So if you can access it, it's pretty much open.
Yeah.
So we're going to get in the character profile of Shawn. Shawn Higgins went missing on October 14th in 2016. He was a male. His age was 41 at the time of the disappearance. He was 6 foot, 200 to 210 pounds. He had brown hair and blue eyes. He was missing the fingertips on his left index and middle fingers, has a tribal tattoo on his right arm, and a large scar on his left knee and scars on his abdomen.
I have no research into why he's missing his fingertips either, but I found that kind of interesting.
His index and middle finger, was he in the military?
No, but I think he's in... Now, I read it somewhere. He's in some kind of trade, so he might have lost him through work.
Okay.
But I don't know.
All right. Because Shawn thought this would be a quick trip, he didn't take his backpack with him, which included a GPS.
Yes.
As are red flags as usual. Always bring your gear. Experience in wilderness. Both, and when they say both, because his uncle's there, was it both him and his son?
Him and his son, yeah.
Okay. Both were very experienced in the wilderness. So both Shawn and Trevor had a lot of experience hunting in the area. Trevor had grown up hunting in this piece of wilderness specifically, but his dad knew it even better. Another reason why his failure to show was so unnerving. Shawn knew the mountains and the ridges about as well as anyone and was an expert in pursuing deer in the timber. He jokingly referred to himself as Dr. Blacktail. So this wasn't like a one-off trip, like we're going to get into hunting, so let's check it out. Like he knew what he's doing, which we've talked about before can lead to complacency as well sometimes. So
yeah, and I mean, the three of them, from what I read, have done this type of hunting lots of times before. So yeah, I mean, it could, if you do this over and over every year, you might get kind of complacent because nothing bad has happened yet.
Yeah.
But so, yeah.
Okay. So just a quick list of people we're going to talk about in this case and the relationship. The victim was Shawn Higgins. When you hear the name Trevor Higgins, that is the son of Shawn. Will Chandler was the uncle that was there, and Stephanie Higgins was the wife of Shawn and the mother of Trevor. Mike, our next partner has a product I literally use every day. I started taking AG1 because, as many of you know, I got into kickboxing and was feeling slow and sluggish on training days. I was taking more supplements than I could count, and nothing was helping. One of the fighters at my gym recommended Athletic Greens AG1 Daily Health Drink, and I've never felt better. One scoop of AG1 in the morning has me ready to take on Mike Tyson by the time I get to the gym. One serving of AG1 contains 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens that support better sleep quality, recovery, mental clarity, and alertness. All things very important in the world of combat fighting. Best of all, it costs less than $3 a day, which from my own experience is cheaper than getting all the different supplements yourself. For less than a cup of Starbucks, you can make an investment in your own health that I can personally vouch for. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs for your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/emerging. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/EMERGING to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
All right, so jumping right into the timeline, like Joe had mentioned earlier, this hunting party started off on October 14th, 2016, which is a Friday. Shawn, his 21-year-old son Trevor, and Trevor's uncle were out hunting in the Shasta Costa drainage area in the Bear Camp region of this forest. And their plan was roughly the following. So Shawn was going to hike down this narrow footpath looking for blacktail. And for a while, the footpath actually ran along the side of the road. Meanwhile, Trevor, who had actually shot a deer the day before would wait with the truck at the next trailhead 2 miles up Burnt Ridge Road in this region of Southwest Oregon. So after a couple hours, they planned to meet and then go drive and get their uncle Will. Trevor's uncle, so it was their uncle who they had dropped off earlier in the day. And like I said earlier, they've done this many times, so this was not something out of the ordinary. They knew what they were doing. And they all knew that, there was no reason for Shawn to have taken more than an hour or so to make the hike. So, and of course, a lot of these cases, a storm began to kind of bear down on the mountain this day, which kind of started to concern Trevor when his dad was late checking in. So it's same day now. It's 2:30 p.m. Like I said, October 14th, 2016, which is Friday. The uncle, Will, shows up at the truck. Trevor, which is his nephew, and Shawn, which was his brother-in-law, were supposed to pick him up 3 hours ago, but they never showed up. So he had to walk the 7 miles down the mountain himself. So you can imagine he was a little pissed off, and he was cold because, the storm was starting to, pick up. And he got to the truck, and he basically kind of yelled at Trevor, and he was quoted saying, "What the hell is going on?" But the moment he actually saw Trevor's face, he knew something was wrong.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, Trevor replies, "My dad hasn't come out yet." So Will thought this was really strange because he said for as long as he had known Shawn, he had never once failed to show up like this. So Will and Trevor agreed that they needed to look for Shawn before the weather got worse. But even now, the conditions weren't very conducive for searching. The wind was blowing really bad. They said it was blowing hard enough to shake the truck. Tree limbs were coming down around them. I mean, Joe and I have all been up in the mountains when a storm like this kind of started. I was Mount Rainier.
Ones where the wind's rocking the car.
Yeah,
it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I was in a storm like that on Mount Rainier, and it was brutal. It would be really tough to search for somebody in conditions like that. And they were also concerned that with the amount of rain and wind and everything going on, that it wouldn't take long to erase any tracks from Shawn. So they wanted to get out there and start searching right away. So with nightfall just a few hours away, Will and Trevor split up in the hopes of finding Shawn quickly. Now, I'm going to kind of jump in. I'm telling the story, but I'm going to kind of jump in with some problems I see right away. First problem is Trevor and Will probably shouldn't have split up with the kind of weather that was going on and with it only being a few hours from nightfall.
Well, and you're already searching for a missing person. Mm-hmm. You don't want to create the opportunity to have a second missing person.
Yes. But they decided to split up in hopes of finding Shawn quicker. Trevor would start at the far trailhead where he dropped off his dad that morning, while Will hiked in from where the truck was parked. They planned to meet in the middle after one of them had found Shawn. Trevor then drove his four-wheeler north to the trailhead, but the narrow path forced him to hike from there. As he set off down the trail, he could see pretty far through the old-growth timber and the rock outcroppings. He also found the path that Shawn had originally taken because Shawn had ribbon marked the trees, and Trevor ended up following that. And that's a very common thing for people to deer hunt. Usually deer hunters they like to find their spot out in the woods, and it's usually not obviously on a trail. They kind of go bushwhacking off, and in order to be able to find their deer stand, they usually tie little ribbons kind of on trees every 10, 20 feet so that they can find their way in and out. So that's what Shawn did. With the wind and the rain picking up pretty good, Trevor was quoted as saying, "I started to freak out." He recalls, "The only thing that was really going through my mind was I need to find my dad." So
what's crazy is with and for those watching the video, I'm just showing some images of ribbon marking.
Yeah,
the fact that he did that and couldn't find his way back out.
Well, yeah.
So I'm not going to get into theories yet, but that's I'm not going to say it's an advanced method, but it's not like he just went out. Storm comes in, okay, great. I don't have my tracks anymore. Like his son found his ribbon markings in the storm. So
yeah.
All right, keep going.
Yeah, so Trevor followed the trail for nearly an hour and a half until he reached a clearing atop of the ridgeline. He had no idea if Will had found his dad. He'd been in such a rush to get on the track and search that he neglected to bring a cell phone, a compass, or a GPS. So I'm going to pause again here. I think this is another big mistake that Trevor made, and I've mentioned this in previous episodes, that if something happens to you out in the wilderness, getting flustered and panicking is not going to help you survive. You want to pause, collect your thoughts, take some deep breaths, and then logically think through your next moves. Because I had this very situation my first hiking trip in Canyonlands. Our group was lost, and we were out of water in the middle of the desert, and we panicked at first, but then we collected ourselves and took deep breaths and figured a way to get out of the park. And, that's what you got to do. And maybe if he would have, after he realized his dad was missing at the truck, be like, all right, do I have everything? Oh, GPS.
Yeah, it's
compass,
like, it's going to be hard
cell
because you
phone.
are flustered. It could be a loved one, and you think every second matters. But the reality is, if you put yourself in danger, it could be taking away from a rescue mission for other people, even if you're not totally lost. So, take the 10 seconds, take a minute. It's just that it's that long. Yeah, take that time, compose yourself. If there's people with you, talk it out, and then go make your action.
Yeah, kind of like doing something like yoga breathing, or like deep breaths in and out. It's like, but that's been proven to calm people down, and you're going to make better, more rational decisions when you're in a calm state of mind versus panicked.
Absolutely.
So that's my only advice if anyone listening ever gets into a scary situation in the wilderness. So, like I said, he, in his kind of panicked drive to go find his dad, he left any navigation equipment in the truck. All he had with him was his Remington 700, a knife, a lighter, and the clothes he was wearing while he was hunting. So from this clearing, the trail split, and though the ribbon stopped, Trevor decided to head right, believing that that way led back toward the road. So again, another big mistake. He's not on trail. He's following a ribbon trail that his dad tied off, we think. It might have not even been Shawn's.
Yeah, but even then, he was following that. Like, you should probably take that back.
Yeah, I mean, with the weather conditions, and so me personally, even if I was looking for my dad or uncle or somebody with nightfall coming, if I didn't have the gear necessary, I would probably turn around and head back out, because especially in the mountains. I mean, it's not like they're in northern Wisconsin where it's flat.
Yep.
And it sounds like he doesn't have a headlamp with him. So, but he decided to, head right at that clearing. So the trees that engulfed him made it difficult to gauge where he was going, and it was getting dark very fast, and the rain was intensifying. So he became desperate to find his way back. He was quoted in saying, "I just wanted to get to the pickup," he says. "I wanted to see if my uncle found my dad." So as he was going, the underbrush was growing thicker, and Trevor was pushing his way through as fast as he could. After another mile or so, he stumbled upon a deep draw with a creek at the bottom. He could barely see as he kind of slowly worked his way down the slope. Suddenly, his feet kicked out from under him, and he tumbled to the bottom. After a moment, he managed to stand up and collect himself, and he was kind of shaken up but uninjured, thankfully. So he looked up towards the ridges that surrounded him, and he described it as walls of blackness, and he's like, "I'm lost." So he was lost, but he knew that he'd be worse off continuing blind than he would be making a camp. So a really smart thing he did, and we've said this a lot in other episodes, is as soon as you come to the realization that you're missing or that you're lost, the worst thing you can probably do at that point is blindly walk around, walk in any direction at that point, because you're already lost. You don't know where you are, especially if you don't have any navigation equipment. If you have a compass and know how to use it, you could probably, figure your way out of there.
Yeah. But if you're following it the whole way in, you can know if you're going back the right way.
But he made a really smart decision by deciding, you know what, I'm going to set up a camp and I'm going to try to survive as long as I can, and hopefully search and rescue will eventually find me. And that's really good advice for anyone who gets lost deep in the wilderness. Like, stay put. And if you have to move, find a spot that you think you can survive the longest.
Yeah, you want to move to like where it's safe, but that's it. Like,
Yeah,
if you're in an unsafe spot, then you want to move to a safe spot, preferably higher elevation.
Yeah.
And then don't move, because if they catch your trail, they're going to follow your trail.
Yeah.
And the less you wander, the closer you are to the beginning of your trail.
Yeah, and it's a race against the clock once you're lost, especially in the mountains and in these kinds of conditions. He is not going to survive an extended period out there.
Yeah, with no gear.
Basically no gear. It's going to be getting cold and rain. Rain is coming down. So, great decision by Trevor to stay put. So it goes on, he tried to imagine his dad somewhere out there alone. I kept telling myself over and over that my dad had made it out, that he was with my uncle. So you got to think, like, this kid, 21-year-old kid, he's freaking out. He's lost. His dad's lost. Like, I can't imagine what's going through his mind. Like,
yeah,
it's got to be crazy. So
I'd be panicking.
Yeah.
At that age.
Oh, yeah. So the rest of the timeline, I'm going to be kind of jumping in between different timelines. So I'm going to be, there's going to be a search and rescue timeline. I'll try to distinguish between them. There's going to be a timeline for Stephanie, the wife, and then a timeline for Trevor, because there's different stuff going on with all of these people. So it's still October 14th, 2016. It's now 7 p.m. The Curry County Sheriff's Office received a call on Friday, October 14th, about 7 p.m., about 2 lost hunters in the Bear Camp area about 45 miles east of Gold Beach. Curry County Sheriff's Office Sergeant Ted Heath and several search and rescue members responded to the area and determined that the 2 missing were the father and son, both of, I believe that's Coos Bay. SAR members were actually not able to deploy into the massive area due to darkness and the weather, but they were actually still out there all night driving the roads in the area, probably honking their horns and yelling, trying to maybe see if they can, find them. But
sure,
the weather was so bad, and, it's tough starting a search off in the dark. So they really had no choice but to wait until, first light. Mm-hmm. So we're still on the search and rescue timeline here. So now it is October 15th, 2016, which is Saturday. Curry County Sheriff's SAR members, assisted by local residents with knowledge of the area, hiked into the area and spent the day in bad weather searching for both Shawn and Trevor. A call was placed for additional resources from the Corsair counties, along with requests for helicopters. The search, again, that day ended at dark with no sign of the men. Again, the SAR members continued to drive the roads throughout Saturday night. The Curry Coastal Pilot actually reported that day that their vehicle was found Saturday near Squirrel Peak, about 15 miles east of Agnes. So now we're on the same day, but we're switching over to the timeline of Stephanie Higgins. So it's October 15th, 2016 at 5 a.m. Stephanie Higgins woke to knocking on her door. It was her father, David Pettit, who lived a house over. That night, Will, after failing to reconnect with Trevor, had phoned his wife back in Coos Bay, a small community on the Oregon coast where they all lived. So he told me about Shawn first, and she flipped out. And then Stephanie goes on to say, it took him a minute to tell me about Trevor. So, like, she was freaking out that her husband's, can you imagine that?
Oh.
Your husband's missing. Oh, and so is your son. Like,
yeah, that's...
I can't imagine.
I wouldn't even, I'd be like, your husband and your son are missing. Like, I would have to get it over with.
Yeah. So Stephanie's father and sister got her in the car, and they set out for the Rogue River-Siskiyou National Forest about 3 hours away. They arrived at the trailhead about an hour before rescuers. Stephanie waited and watched, hoping Shawn and Trevor would come out at any moment, but no one would let her join the search, fearing she assumed that she might see something she'd never forget. So I don't think searchers... So she thinks they didn't let her on the search because, what if they find a body and it's, Shawn or Trevor? I'm guessing they probably didn't let her on the search because we've seen this in other searches where a lot of people want to help, but they're not equipped.
Yeah, if it's not flat ground, like open field where you're doing
Yeah.
arm in arm, if it's more technical, it's like you could run the risk of losing, regardless if it's her family, like if it's just a person who doesn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
Now you have to like potentially you lose resources to go search for that person.
Yeah, or she could get injured. And
Exactly.
So, probably the right decision by search and rescue.
Oh, I'd be the same way though.
Yeah.
Like I'd be trying to get there and I'd be losing my mind if they wouldn't let me look.
Yeah.
Because you'd feel so helpless.
Yeah. Well, and she actually goes on to say that she felt helpless.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. I swear I didn't read that.
Yeah, she goes, if she were the one who had vanished, there was no way that Shawn and Trevor wouldn't be out looking for me. We are not a sit around and wait for crap to happen kind of people. So I feel her anguish there. It would be tough. You'd want to be out there looking.
You'd have to like cuff me to a tree or something.
Yeah, so as the morning wore on, more people came to help. Guys Shawn had worked construction jobs with and friends from their town. Search parties were formed, dog teams were dispatched, and reinforcements were called in. So we are jumping now to Trevor's timeline, same day. Sorry if this gets a little confusing. There wasn't really a good way to...
It's one of those TV shows where they go back to the beginning of the day but follow a new character each time.
Kind of, yeah. There wasn't really a great way to tell everybody's different timeline other than just...
Nah, this is better, because if we were trying to say what everybody was doing concurrently...
Really confusing.
It would take forever, too.
So we are back with Trevor's timeline right now. Same day. It's October 15th, 2016. And it's around dawn, and we know that at this point, Trevor was only about 3 miles away from where the search and rescue teams were operating. So that's amazing. You realize in some of these cases that people that are missing aren't that far away. Like, they're pretty close.
Yeah. You can't walk very far in the woods.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Elevation, you got thick, and these guys weren't on trails. They were just walking, through the middle of the woods. So.
Yep.
About 3 miles away, Trevor woke up cold and wet at dawn on Saturday. In the night, he had made a shelter from downed limbs and dead bark, leaning them against a tree. He tried to start a fire with wood shavings and small strips of clothing, but he couldn't get his lighter to work, and everything was damp and soaked. Good little advice for people is bring waterproof matches in a little canister with you. I've had lighters out in the woods that have, if it gets too damp, you're not going to be able to get that lighter to work. So it's always a good idea to bring some waterproof matches, and there's even some fire starter gel that you can buy that if it's raining or if it's really damp conditions, that even with that gel you could probably get a fire going. So
yeah.
Unfortunately, he couldn't get a fire going that night. So it's now mid-morning on Saturday, October 15th, 2016. We're still with Trevor's timeline. So by mid-morning, lightning was cracking across the sky as Trevor gathered his gear and set out into the storm. He headed towards where he thought the road might be, just 40 yards from the shelter. Something told him to stop. He went on to quote, "My dad had plenty of friends who had hunted the area with him for years," he says. "They could be looking for him. Plus, he trusted that his uncle had found his dad and that together they would be searching. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on, so I figured I'd try to set myself up to where I could survive as long as possible." So he thought about leaving the camp he'd set up, but he decided to stay there, and he's like, "I'm staying here until I'm dead." So hopefully someone finds me before that happens.
Yeah. That's a tough decision.
Yeah.
A smart one.
It's smart
Good for him.
Yeah, so he spent the rest of the day rebuilding his shelter, using an extra raincoat to better insulate the structure and to collect rainwater. He tried to make a fire again, but it was useless. There was little to do but wait. Trevor passed the time in the shelter listening for noises in the distance. He said it rained off and on, during the day and night, but whenever there was a break, he'd walk a little, call out, and wait for a response. So first day, Saturday, that Trevor was in the woods, he didn't see anybody, didn't hear anything. So we're back onto the search and rescue timeline. It is now Sunday, October 16th, 2016. About 80 SAR members from several counties along with family and friends of Shawn and Trevor, arrived on Sunday and continued searching the area. The weather was still extremely bad, making it impossible for the Coast Guard to fly the area due to heavy rains, winds, and persistent fog. Searchers continued searching till dark once again, but they had no clues to indicate where the two were. SAR members continued to drive the roads throughout the night. So another day of full searching, no signs of either of them. We are still on the SAR timeline. It is now Monday, October 17th, 2016. So the search continued on Monday with a large mixture of search and rescue personnel and non-search and rescue volunteers. Again, about 80 searchers combed the areas above and below the High Ridge Trail and down into the Shasta Costa drainage. The weather was still pretty bad this day, with heavy rains and fog making the search difficult. And with all the rains, the creeks and drainages were full of rushing waters, and along with the wind, made it impossible to hear in the search areas. So that's the thing you don't think about, too. If there's a lot of flowing water in an area where people are searching, we've been around rivers and stuff on our hikes, and the closer you get, they get loud, especially after a heavy rain. So it's just another thing that kind of hampered the search. So by the end of the 17th, search and rescue, again, no clues of where Shawn and Trevor were, and then they suspended the search for the night. So we are going to stay on the same day, and we're going to jump back to Trevor's timeline. So it is now late in the day on Monday, October 17th, 2016. So this is now the fourth day that Trevor's been out in the woods, counting the first day that he went hunting. And he actually hiked up a hill and heard dogs barking. He blew a whistle he had made from an empty shell casing, hoping to get their attention. So you know what I'm getting from this entire story is this kid actually is pretty savvy. You know, even though, he forgot his gear and stuff, I think we can excuse that. His dad's missing.
Exactly. I think he was panicking.
But, he made a really good decision to stay put. It sounds like he built a pretty good, little campsite.
He survived 4 days in cold, wet weather.
Yeah.
And without hypothermia setting in yet. So that's a pretty dang good shelter and sleeping area.
Yeah. I mean, he was able to collect rainwater to stay hydrated, which is very important. He made a whistle out of an empty, shell casing. I mean, pretty good stuff by Trevor here. So like we said, he was blowing that whistle, hoping to get their attention. Then came the sound of people talking. He yelled and blew the whistle more, but soon the woods fell silent. So, somebody was in the area, but they just couldn't hear him.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Did he not have his gun to shoot or anything?
Well, he did shoot that a few times later on in the timeline here.
Oh, so he didn't have it with him?
Yeah. Well, he had a Remington 700 with him, so he had a rifle with him.
I'm saying at that time where he heard people,
yeah.
Or he didn't think about it. Okay.
So he goes on to think maybe rescuers are narrowing in. He thought at mid-morning came another sign of hope. A helicopter appeared flying within 100 yards of his shelter.
Oh.
He ran into a nearby...
But it's down trees. They probably can't see it.
Yeah, so he ran into a nearby clearing and waved, frantically waved. He signaled by firing his rifle into the air 3 times, but the chopper moved on.
Oh, you wouldn't hear that from a helicopter.
No, and, Trevor goes on to say, that was honestly the worst point of his, getting lost so far, seeing a helicopter 100 yards away and they miss him.
Yeah.
So he goes on to say it was surreal, coming to terms with the thought that this might be the end, that he might die before his parents and grandparents. He goes on to say, you want to at least be able to say goodbye to everybody. Though still he tried to stay calm, he had to make it back for his dad. He goes on to say it would destroy him if I had gotten lost out there and had never been found. So,
that's so terrible.
I just can't imagine, being in his position. It's got to be terrifying and demoralizing.
Well, feeling like the end is near and he feels guilty.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
That's tough. So October 18th, 2016, we had a quick update on the search and rescue operation. So the search continued on Tuesday with multiple counties and local volunteers from several counties, including family and friends. Several helicopters were on standby if the sky is clear. So the theme of this search is that the weather was really terrible and hampered a lot of the aerial searching. So jumping back to Trevor's timeline, same day, October 18th, 2016. So now this is Trevor's 5th day in the wilderness, and he actually got a break. The weather started to, the weather broke and sunlight started coming down. At 10 a.m., he stripped off his damp clothes and hung them up to dry. He was sitting in the dirt when he heard another helicopter circling nearby. It came within view, and he tried to flag it down, waving a yellow bag tied to his rifle barrel, but the chopper quickly disappeared. So 2 times helicopters flew near him close enough that he could see, and he could not get their attention.
Oh, that's terrible.
So he was devastated. He wondered whether that was his last shot at rescue. With winter coming, he knew the mountain would soon be impassable, and he's right. They eventually do stop the search pretty soon.
Yeah.
So it's now October 18th, 2016 at 2:30 p.m. It's a Tuesday. So we're still on Trevor's timeline. So at 2:30 p.m., though he heard voices far off through the trees, he yelled and yelled, and he got an answer.
Oh.
So search and rescue crews found Trevor at the bottom of a creek suffering from severe hypothermia. So he probably...
He was right on the edge.
He probably wouldn't have survived another 24 hours out there. So.
Probably not. Maybe not even another few more hours.
Yeah. So severe hypothermia because I'll get into it a little farther now, but his some of his organs, when he gets to the hospital, they found are actually failing, including his liver and kidneys.
Jeez.
So, I mean, they found him about...
Right on time?
Right in time. I mean, so 2 men appeared in the clearing. They had been looking for him. They said... And then Trevor responded, "What took you so long?" So he was still joking, even with severe hypothermia and everything that's been going on. So the men had a fire built within 10 minutes, by which point Trevor worked up the nerve to ask the question. He asked, "Are you searching for one lost person or 2?" And they responded, 2, which confirmed his worst fear. His father had never made it back to the truck. He thought he was going to vomit. He said, I had told myself for so long that my dad was out looking for me, and that he was fine, he says. So, it probably kept him going, thinking that.
Yeah, it sounded like that.
It would be demoralizing if you knew your dad was still missing while you're lost and trying to survive.
Yeah.
So just kind of, making your brain think that, oh, my dad's fine. He's back at the truck looking for me.
Like, I got to stay alive for him.
Yeah, that can keep you going.
Absolutely.
So, at about 3:40 p.m. the same day on Tuesday, crews got Trevor Higgins out of the woods and took him by helicopter to the U.S. Coast Guard station in North Bend to be transported to a Bay Area hospital. Stephanie, the mom of Trevor and the wife of Shawn, was at the top of the mountain when word came that Trevor had been found and was being airlifted to the hospital. She pleaded to speak with him over the radio to hear his voice, but they declined her request. So she ended up meeting Trevor at the hospital. He was, like we said, hypothermic, and his kidneys and liver were shutting down. But doctors said he would make a full recovery. So, Trevor even noted that the doctors let him eat a bacon cheeseburger.
Oh,
so
it must have tasted so fantastic.
Can you imagine how good that tasted?
Like 5 days of no food, cold. Oh, it was the best probably bacon. It makes me think of the scene from Iron Man when he gets back from being like caught by the terrorists, and he just eats a Whopper sitting on the floor of the press conference.
Oh yeah,
he's just eating burgers the whole time.
I mean, we've pigged out after hiking trips.
Oh, I've pigged out like all the weight I've lost, I gained back the first meal.
It's delicious though.
It is
amazing. So Stephanie returned. After meeting her son and making sure he was okay, Stephanie returned to the mountain later that day, even though there was no reason to suspect foul play, she started kind of, suspecting something might have happened. So we'll get into more of that into the theories, but
okay.
So it is now October 25th, 2016, and unfortunately this is the day the sheriff's department suspended the search for Shawn Higgins. They went on to say, in the 11 days since he disappeared, search teams had uncovered no trace of him and were no closer to knowing where he might be. With so much time having passed, the odds were against his survival. So in all, this was a pretty massive search and rescue operation. They utilized over 200 to 300 searchers per day at its peak.
It was 11 days.
Yeah, they had drones in the air, they had helicopters when the weather permitted, and they had several K-9 units scouring the ground. But as you can imagine, with that kind of terrible weather, it'd be probably really tough for any kind of dog unit to pick up on,
especially based on what the terrain sounds like.
Yeah. So over the next couple of months, she and family members returned to the mountain every weekend, searching areas that might have been overlooked. But by early December, snow had blanketed the mountain, halting their efforts, but they continued to talk about coming back out there in the spring. So it's now early June of 2017. Once the snow had melted off the top of the mountain, Trevor and about a dozen of Shawn's friends hiked down into the canyons, beginning in the deepest, darkest holes. Trevor was nervous about going back into the woods again. He was quoted saying, "I don't know if I would want to see his body if he wasn't alive," which I don't blame him. That would be...
I can't believe he went down just like him, maybe having a little PTSD from having to survive there himself.
Yeah. So Stephanie, meanwhile, waited at the top of the mountain, hoping for news. After 3 days, the group had found nothing. She was quoted as saying, "It's weird, it's confusing, it's frustrating, it's heartbreaking. I just really, really like him and want him to come back." So, and then, of course, Oregon law Oregon, I said it wrong.
You did.
Oregon.
You call yourself.
I know. Oregon law requires that 5 years pass before a missing person can be considered legally dead, which means Shawn's family cannot collect his life insurance or even sell his truck unless a body is found. And I mentioned that just because some of the news articles I read mentioned that after Shawn had went missing, Trevor and Stephanie fell on some pretty tough times because he was kind of the sole breadwinner.
Yeah.
So they were having some pretty hard financial times, after the period of Shawn's disappearance. So I don't know how they're doing today, but that's tough.
Yeah, it is.
So as I wrap up the timeline, I really just had one observation, and we've made this before in other cases, but, Shawn had layers of clothing. He had a gun, bullets. Nothing was ever found. None of his clothing. A gun is not going to easily wash away. They're pretty heavy. Mm-hmm. It's not going to degrade.
Yeah, it'll survive the elements pretty well.
Yeah, as soon as the snow melts, you'll see it. So yeah, it's just strange that nothing was ever found of him. And this isn't necessarily terrain like our previous episode, 2 episodes ago, with was his name Dave Cook?
I think so.
And the terrain he was climbing in was very rugged and mountainous. This area is, mountainous, but it's not
technical.
The foliage is a lot thicker, so that could have played a role. So I'm starting to get into theories, but why don't we just jump into theories?
Okay, let's do it.
So I'll quickly just give a statement from the Curry County Sheriff, and then a statement from Tara Fisher, which is Shawn's sister, and then we can go into what we think might have happened. So Curry County Sheriff's theory on what happened to Shawn is pretty basic. They... obviously, the case is still open and active, but they believe that he succumbed to the elements while he was out there, and maybe someday his remains will be found. But that's a pretty good guess what happened.
Yeah, that's probably the most logical explanation.
Yeah. So Tara Fisher, she was quoted as, and this is a direct quote from her: "There have been countless stories and rumors over the years about what could have happened to her brother. Stories from drug cartels to Bigfoot. Some people believe Shawn fell into a ravine so treacherous it wasn't reachable by search crews. Others believe he's not even in the woods at all anymore." So that just shows you a lot of... It's such a strange case. People really don't know what could have happened to him.
Yeah.
For me personally, I think, he could have fallen into some kind of ravine, like she said. We've talked about in the past where when people get severely hypothermic, they might try to burrow down to get away from the elements. Perhaps maybe he burrowed down into some kind of cave or something, which hampered the ability of search crews to find him. Mm-hmm. Cougar attack. Now, full-grown man, 6 feet tall, 210 pounds at full strength is not going to get taken down. But if he's severely hypothermic and near death,
if he's weak, for sure.
Maybe a cougar might attempt, or a mountain lion might attempt to attack him. Mm-hmm. But again, you would see evidence of that.
Yeah. No,
So-
I agree. Yeah, I think you would find, the shredding of clothing, blood stains, things like that.
Yeah, so-
especially against snow.
Yeah. Though it was raining a ton when he went missing, so that could
Okay.
wash away stuff too.
Okay.
So I don't know. What do you think happened?
I kind of want to go with the sheriffs. I think it sounds like how thick the forest is. If you trip, fall, injure yourself, you could get stuck in some pretty bad places. I'd say outside of that, it sounds like he was experienced. So I don't feel like it was a got lost type of thing. I think maybe he was hiking and got hurt.
Yeah.
Maybe tripped and hit his head and got knocked out, or had a heart attack or something like that where he became incapacitated. Mm-hmm. And then if you're on the ground and you can't move anywhere and you're under brush, it's going to be hard to find you. I just feel like that's the most reasonable thing that could happen.
Yeah. No, I think all those are reasonable theories. I think too, he obviously didn't have his GPS with him, and just by the fact that he's hunted so many times in this area, perhaps he made it out there. He tied up the ribbons and he got to his spot, and then he got turned around and kind of did the same thing like his son did. He's like, oh, I think the road's that way. Mm-hmm. So he started hiking, and maybe it was, if it's a clear sunny day, you can pretty much, tell east and west.
Yeah.
It's not a secret to anybody.
Yeah.
But if it's overcast or, raining, you could get turned around and think you're going west when you could be going east or north. So I'm wondering if maybe he got turned around, started walking in the wrong direction, and then, unlike his son, didn't stop and set up camp and kept going. And maybe
I can see that.
Walked right out of the search area, it got dark, and then he may have injured himself, in the dark.
Well, how about this? I didn't even think about this. They're hunting, right?
Yeah.
What happens if he shoots something, especially a deer? You're going to have to track it.
Yeah.
So he could have been on his normal path, shoots a deer, then goes to track it. So and the deer are going to go downhill. They're not going to climb if he hits something. So he could be way off course tracking an animal that he shot.
And then gets injured.
Yeah, and then that could have happened, and he might be way off of. That could explain why, the ribbons ended. Yeah, and he still couldn't find them. He could have shot something and went to track it, and they could run for 100 yards.
Yeah, and it could go even farther. Yeah, then he'd walk right out of the search area.
Yes,
and then because of the weather, they weren't able to get helicopters up right away, which might impede on, finding him. And if he was tracking it into the night, I could easily see something happening where he gets injured or falls into a ravine at that point. Or
yeah, my guess is with cold weather, he probably wouldn't want to track in the night, but if he got lost at that point.
Yeah.
Tracked it and then got turned around because the weather's coming in.
Yep.
That could make it difficult. Because, if it's cold, you don't have to worry about gutting the animal right away.
Yeah.
Unless it's a hot day. I think those are the most plausible. What's your off the deep end?
Off the deep end.
Off the deep end.
Maybe there's a serial killer in the mountains that got him.
Okay. And that's why we can't account for any of his gear.
Yeah.
He was abducted.
Maybe it was Bigfoot.
Maybe.
No, I think the deep end would be a serial killer. There are stories of crazy people living in the mountains, so perhaps that's what happened to him.
I would agree with you on that one. I think there's no sign or weird, suspicious thing that's happening outside of it's. If it was perfectly beautiful, clear days and everything like that, that's when it would be easier to go off the deep end.
Yeah.
But with all the facts that line up, the point, it was so difficult to search the entire time.
Yeah.
Just being battered down with bad weather. I think the only off the deep end could be something like that.
Yeah.
A drug thing. I don't know why they'd be out there at that time of year.
Yeah, and it's not. Yeah.
But if it's just a crazy person. I'm kind of with you on that one for the deep end.
Yeah, but I think the most plausible is probably I like the idea that he actually shot a deer, and with all the creeks and rivers, rushing like they mentioned in the timeline, they may not have heard a gunshot. I've been up north during deer season, and it's usually pretty easy to hear gunshots off in a distance. But
not in thick woods, though. That's the thing. With how they're saying it is.
Yeah.
He could hear dogs barking, but they couldn't hear him whistle.
Yeah, and if it's really windy, and rain is coming down, and the rivers are, swelling with water and flowing.
It's loud. It's very loud.
They
it's
may
not super peaceful, quote unquote.
Because nowhere in the story did they mention anything about hearing a gunshot, but that doesn't mean he didn't shoot a deer.
Yeah, or if he was lost, if he's smart, what hunters always taught 3 shots. Things in threes. When you're lost, things in threes.
Well, and the son did that, and no one heard it.
Exactly.
I mean, they didn't find him until a couple days.
He did
after
shoot
that.
when a helicopter was over. It's like almost
That's
like
true.
you should have waited till it was gone.
Yeah,
because the helicopter's louder.
Probably
than a
should have
gunshot.
done it when he heard the people talking.
That's what I was thinking. Like if you hear voices, like start shooting a gun off.
Yeah.
So,
and I know we're gonna get backlash. People will say you can't just shoot a gun off into the air, but
when you're lost in the woods,
yeah.
Or discharge in the ground or something. But
we obviously know that what goes up must come down. And if you're shooting bullets into the air, the lead will eventually come back down and could injure somebody. But that remote of an area, obviously you wouldn't fire the gun in the direction of where you heard sounds from.
Yeah, they're saying straight up in the air.
Yeah.
We are always taught that in hunter safety. It's threes. If you
Yeah.
can get a campfire, do 3 campfires. Like, so if people see 3, that's like because it's weird.
Yeah.
Like if you saw like 3 campfires right next to each other, they'd be like, that's odd. Why do they have 3 right there?
Yeah.
So that's what they say. Like you're supposed to do things in threes. So like you take 3
Interesting.
shots. But yeah, I think the Mythbusters did that where they shoot a bullet up and the velocity coming down because it just tumbles.
Yeah.
It'd be like getting hit in the head with a marble.
Well, I mean, and if you're worried about it, you could shoot it fired into the ground.
Yeah.
But I think Trevor probably at this point has just wanted to get found.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So-
I'd be shooting off in the air, too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think his dad either wandered off,
I think he got injured while looking for a kill.
Okay.
That would be the most, because if he knows the areas, the only time that would be like, okay, where would he have a mistake? Probably going off what, like, quote unquote trails.
And maybe he shot the deer towards the end of the day and probably should have just let it go.
Yeah.
But it was
and you
getting
pick
dark
up
out.
pick up the, you know what? If it's raining, he might be more like, hey, I better get the blood trail now.
Yeah.
And mark it before, but.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think
it
this
could have been
is-
like the perfect storm of just like bad luck.
Yeah. So yeah, I think he wandered out of the search area, probably looking for a kill, and got injured.
I think so too.
So
let us know what you think. But thanks again for tuning into our show. We appreciate all of you for listening and sharing Locations Unknown with your friends and family. Be sure to like us and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We do have the YouTube channel that you can subscribe to now as well for other video content. If you'd like to support the show monetarily, you can visit our Facebook store, buy some cool swag and merch. Also at our website at locationsunknown.org, not com.org. Otherwise, you can donate to our Patreon account and get all the sweet additional episodes, as well as signing up for YouTube's, what do they call that? Just subscription?
YouTube members.
YouTube members. So you can be a Patreon or a YouTube member of ours.
Yes.
And that's another way to support the show, and you get extra content. That's cool. You'll have a bunch of extra episodes. We're up to like 23.
24.
24?
Yes.
So there you go. If you didn't start now, you get 24 new episodes to binge.
Yes.
And just remember, when enjoying the beauty of nature, whether backpacking, camping, or simply taking a walk, always remember to leave no trace. Thanks, and we will see you all next time.